That's all I got.
All right. Sorry, one sec. Forgot I don't have premium Twitter anymore. All right. Yeah, this is the last one ever.
This is the worst.
Mutazita Banakis, welcome into the Worst Fantasy Show. I am your host with the least, Jack Lusney, here with my good friend, Too Much Brian, for the last Worst Fantasy Show ever. That's because next year we're going through a big rehaul and we're going to be turning into Best Ball Bros. So Worst Fantasy Show will still be coming back, but in a new iteration. So this version of the show will be dead and gone. But Brian, welcome to The Last of Us. Tell us where we can find your work that will continue on past this.
Hey, wherever you can find me, folks. It's at @too_much_Brian on X. It's at @too_much_Brian everywhere else. It's just because, I can't get that damn domain from Elon there. He won't drop the underscore for me. Mainly all my stuff, it's the Fantasy Football Advice Network. If you're looking for podcasts, written work, video, it's a pretty good time over there. It's not too shabby.
All right. Well, without further ado, we'll start off this Fantasy Football Awards show, and we will kick it off with the Rookie of the Year.
Who the hell are you?
I'm the new guy.
So, Brian, being the guest on the show, why don't you start us off? Who is your Rookie of the Year?
Talk about opening up with probably the hardest question in this. Like, we've had some great rookie seasons, absolutely great rookie seasons over the last, probably 4 years. Like 2020, it started off pretty damn well. This one's hard. It was so hard for me. Like, I want to dabble quarterback. Do I want to go running back, wide receiver? Nope. I'm going tight end for this one. I absolutely have to. Travis Kelce is going away. These elite tight ends that we've had, I say plural for some reason. It's been him and maybe some Mark Andrews. They're going away. Who's replacing it? It's the new up-and-coming guy. The guy, just terrible team around him. But Brock Bowers, the rookie, absolutely crushed it. Has the record there, multiple records now for tight end. It's hard to go away from him. Absolutely hard to go away from him here.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Lesnar, Bowers coming in, taking over that tight end position, just like a young Brock Lesnar tearing ass through the WWE. I went a different way with it. I think I was biased and I was partial because this was my guy. So much so that I touted him. To me, he was my most drafted rookie. So I benefited hugely from it. And to finish as the wide receiver 4, you would have thought this was Marvin Harrison Jr., but no, it was a different 3-letter name. It was BTJ. My guy, Brian Thomas Jr., helped carry me to a fantasy championship in my main redraft league, which to me that's the be all end all. So I was very happy about that. Bucky Irving was definitely in contention. Brian talked about there's so many good rookies this year. You had BTJ, Malik Neighbors, Lad McConkey,
Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels. This was top to bottom, all 4 positions. This was amazing for fantasy.
Yeah, so the rookies this year really showed out. This was definitely a heavy position. It was a tough one to call. The next one was pretty tough to call too. Actually, the next 2 for me, I struggled. And I didn't have an answer truly until a half hour before the show started. But we will move on to the best draft value.
There's no point in having a bulb inside a refrigerator. I took the bulb out of the refrigerator. It saves me almost $40 a year in electric.
I don't know why I think that's so funny. I don't know if you watch these extreme cheapskate shows, but the shit they do, I could never live like that. I'm the complete opposite of an extreme cheapskate. I'm like, time is money. I will pay money to save time and energy and convenience. I'm like, yeah, I'll pay more if I know that I'm getting like an easier path. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally get that.
This is the opposite. This is we're mining for value here, the best draft value. I'll start us off because I had a couple guys here, but I ultimately landed on. I had a guy that started strong, and then I had a guy that kind of ended strong, and so I went with the guy that I thought was the most consistent through the whole year, and that was Courtland Sutton. We kind of talked about Bo Nix. But Courtland Sutton finished as a top 15 wide receiver, and he was drafted in double-digit rounds. He was forgotten. Definitely was like taken as like a wide receiver 3, maybe kind of, and then turned into kind of just like a consistent PPR stud. Just was there for you the whole year.
Damn good call. Like, you know what? I'm trying to go through this show and not pick the same player twice. Like strategically kind of pass around where I'm going because there's a couple guys for a lot of these categories. But Courtland Sutton, forgotten in drafts, forgotten by me. We were 3 weeks out of the fantasy ending, completely forgot how great Courtland Sutton was at that value. So yeah, love the pick. I went to running back. I went running back in this one. I almost forgot him as well. Don't know how I did. Finished as the running back 14, 15 in half PPR, 14 in full PPR. Didn't even play the last 2 weeks. But Chuba Hubbard, where was the hype on Jonathan Brooks? I'm guilty. I'm not even going to say what my exposure to was in best ball this past summer because I'm ashamed of how bad he tanked some of my teams. But you know what? Chuba Hubbard was the way to go. Absolutely amazing. Like round 10-ish is where he was going and carried so many teams. So Chuba Hubbard, 1,100 yards. Amazing.
I had two names like as my 1A and 1B. Sutton was the 1A that I wanted to give some shine to. But Chuba Hubbard was next on the list for me. And there was another guy who I'm not going to say his name because he comes up later in the show. But yeah, I mean, Chuba Hubbard, I thought, especially the way that he carried you through like the first part of the season. And he was the one I said, like, he started so strong, but then injuries finally caught up to him. And then sadly, he was placed on IR, missed the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So was Jonathan Brooks. It seems like Chuba Hubbard might just come back next year and retake this role.
He should be locked in. It should absolutely locked in for it. Just with Jonathan Brooks probably missing most of next year, they're not going to spend big money on somebody else. Absolutely. Hey, Chase Brown was absolutely amazing too.
I was going to say Vince had some good ones in the comments. Chase Brown and JSN. Shout out to my guy Hoove. I know if Hoove would have been able to make the show. Sadly, he's dealing with some personal stuff. Shout out to him, a lot of love to him, but he would have definitely had JSN on this list. I can promise you. We had a bet, me and him, of who would perform better, JSN and versus Ladd McConkey, and he was winning for a while. Then it was tied, and then I feel like I won at the end. So that was a good one. And then he said Court was a dog. Love it. So, yeah, a lot of draft value this year. I mean, there is every year when you're minors like us. But let's move on to past the draft. Who was our waiver ad of the year?
Get your shit together. Get the stuff down on the curb. Then it's garbage. It's not stealing. Let's put it over the curb, Trev. Once it's at the curb, it's garbage. So I come along and I take it. I'm just taking people's garbage. That's not stealing. So if he's not stealing, I'm not stealing. Who's stealing? Nobody. It's perfectly fine.
So who is your perfectly fine waiver ad of the year?
Oh, man. I hope I'm not spoiling yours, but like Jordan Mason was in high consideration for me just because of how that kind of played out there going into the season. But he was drafted in quite a few leagues, depending on when you drafted. So I pivoted just a little bit, but I stayed running back. It's a rookie. I'm trying to stay away from these rookies, but there's so many damn good ones, man. Finished running back 13 and 14, depending on how you look at it. 1,100 yards on the ground, almost 400 more through the air. This guy had 8 touchdowns. This guy's taking over the job in Tampa. This guy is Bucky freaking Irving.
Yeah, I mean, this was an obvious one. I also have Bucky Irving as my waiver ad of the year. I feel like a big fucking idiot because I picked him up, and then there was a stretch where he was kind of dealing with injuries and didn't fully have the job yet, and I dropped him, and I felt bad about it when I did it, but it was like it's one of those situations where like every team is different, and I mean we'll talk about these guys later, but this was a team that carried me to a championship because my first and second picks were Saquon and Derrick Henry, so I wasn't exactly hurting for running backs. So any little bit of struggle, I was like willing to cut any other running back, and unfortunately, Bucky Irving for me was one of those guys in that league. But then somebody else picked him up, and I had to play against him in the championship. Vince again with a great pick.
Ooh.
Jonnu Smith, I had him in my honorable mentions, along with Tyrone Tracy was another one. He was my guy. And a good waiver pickup for a long while. Really lasted like way longer than I thought he would.
Jerry Jeudy was one for me as far as waiver wire pickup. Like, I bet he was available in 16-team leagues. Like, just because there was no reason to roster him at all. And then when Jameis comes to town, I mean, the 200-yard game against Denver, oh my God.
Yeah, he was so bad for the first stretch of the season. Then when they finally gave him a quarterback, it was like all of a sudden he was crushing it. The other one I had, kind of in a similar vein of like when they finally gave the guy the job and the work, like he was great down the stretch, it was Rico Dowdle.
Yes.
Rico was the Cowboys offense, as bad and myopic as they were. I mean, Rico Dowdle carried that team, so he definitely deserves some love as a waiver ad of the year. But this next category, it's one of my favorites, even though to me it was one of the most obvious ones. It's the comeback player of the year.
Everyone loves a good comeback story, right? Seabiscuit, the Mighty Ducks,
Robert Downey Jr., who
Rocky.
else? Yes.
Kim Kardashian.
Well,
In the video, she gets cum on her back, I think.
So who was the Kim K of your NFL comeback stories?
You know, it's really hard to pick this one. There's several good candidates, and oh man, I guess two of the guys I have in high consideration. What are they really coming back from? You know, so like I want to pick these other two players, but I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. I want to go with Joe Burrow, just the comeback that he had. This was an absolutely like, you know, from the injury last year to the surgery to the video of him dropping the water bottle.
So
Week
shout out
3.
Dr. Jesse Morris putting a body bag for that.
Dude, oh my God.
Oh my
Several times this freaking season. But, oh man, it was like crazy, the narratives that were being talked about there that like, oh, he could never be the same again. Like, it's done. And put that shit to shame. Absolutely just obliterated with what he had there. And he had a comeback because, yes, he's done stuff like that before. He wiped it off his shoulder and he moved on.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about Burrow. I don't know why. It's like because he was still there last season. Like, I think for me, I struggle with the idea of like what a comeback player is. Like you said, it's like, is it just like a player who was bad last year, or is it like they got injured? Like, so to me, my guy, to me, was the most obvious one. Came back from a devastating injury to just be a relevant running back, but then also was great. I think he topped 1,000 yards. I didn't actually pull the stats on him. But J.K. Dobbins looked like he was running on two legs this year. Shout out to J.K. Two Legs with like the overcoming the Achilles tear to come back and be the Chargers' primary running back. And even he missed 4 weeks, but even still, I think he finished as a top 15 running back and was really good down the stretch. So shout out to J.K. Dobbins.
100%. Like, if you had any like just faith in this guy coming into the season, you haven't the last 3 years, because he's played 9 games over the last 3 years, and like I was rooting for him every single one of those seasons, and I pulled back this year. I was afraid. I was tired of getting hurt. I'm like, I'm looking like an idiot. I gotta stop. And that was my hard thing. Like, what was he coming back from? He hasn't played but 9 games in those last 3 years. But that sophomore season of him, he had 800 yards, 9 touchdowns, and that's exactly what he came back to this year. 905 yards, 9 touchdowns. It was great showing for J.K. Dobbins. Hope that he gets that new contract this offseason. Playing for pennies.
Yeah, no, I think he will. I assume that he's going to return to what's the coordinator's name there? Greg Roman system. That's like where he's found all of his success, and I don't see any reason for them to not bring him back next year as like an option. But this wouldn't be the worst fantasy show if we didn't really get down into the pits and lament. So this might be one of my favorite categories to discuss. The most frustrating start of the year.
Oh, God. Oh!
Fuck!
Marvin Harrison Jr. Come on down. What the fuck? I have this whole theory that it's not just like a football thing. I think it's a personality thing. I think it's, you talk about like his dad, and you look at like the style and personality of a Peyton Manning, right? Who is obsessive about football. Like you talk about like the 1,000 practice reps before they leave the field, like every day, kind of like that. First of all, that seems like a bygone era in a sense when you talk about just like the personalities of NFL quarterbacks these days. Like Kyler Murray is a representation of Gen Z, and Peyton Manning is very like Gen X boomer. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's vibes. And so it's like we've always kind of joked about like, oh, new Call of Duty's out. Like Kyler's not going to be as good for a couple weeks, but like I do get that sense from Kyler Murray of like football is not the be all end all.
Yeah,
like that Tom Brady ish, that like Peyton Manning ish, and so it's like, no, I don't think that he has built up this relationship with Marvin Harrison Jr., especially in his rookie. And so, like, yeah, I expected struggles. I did not expect this much struggle. Like, I thought he would still top 1,000 yards pretty easily. I didn't think he'd have a ton of touchdowns. But, like, this was rough. And you never knew when to start him, but you always had to.
Yeah, because of that boom games, that what was it, week 2, week 3, where he had some like outlandish game, and then you're like, all right, so it's there. It's going to happen every so often. It was more on the lesser side of the often, not great at all. But at the same time, we did it to ourselves, folks. We were the dumbasses drafting him at wide receiver 10, wide receiver 11, 12, whatever it was. That's on us. Like, we drafted him at wide receiver 20. We're not near as disappointed in it, but 100%. There's a lot of hype behind this guy. I'm a Colts fan here. Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out here. I was super pumped, screaming at Ballard, go get him, go get him, go get him. Glad we didn't.
Yeah, I was the opposite. I was not drafting him in any kind of redraft or even best ball formats because of, I went through this with Bijan of like, when a rookie is going that high in drafts, they have to break generational rookie records to just meet the ADP. So it's like you're asking a lot.
How high do you think Genty goes in ADP this coming year?
Oh yeah, he's gonna be the next Bijan, where people are gonna draft him that high.
Top 6.
I won't be able to do it unless he falls to just like the perfect position.
Chargers. If he goes to the Chargers, I'd be willing to spend the top 5.
See, I'm the opposite, actually. I think that's the fool's gold. I think that's the one where if Genty goes to the Chargers and everyone's like, Chargers, like they're exactly the kind of asshole team to have Genty and run out Gus Bus for to vulture touchdowns from them.
You talked about J.K. Dobbins re-signing. As soon as you said that, I was like, God, I would hate that if Genty went there. But there's no way they're going to get him. The Cowboys draft before the Chargers, so there's no way the Chargers are going to get him.
Yeah, I mean,
Jerry Jones is going to do it.
If the Cowboys draft him, I don't think that's much better.
No, I'm not thrilled. I wouldn't be thrilled about that one.
So I don't know exactly what, because I'm like, he'd have to fall. I don't even know what that perfect position would be in my eyes for him to fall into.
Minnesota.
Actually, no. You know what it is? I'll give you one, and it's never going to happen because I think because they won too much, their capital's too high, or the draft capital's too low. I mean, but if they could somehow trade up to get him, the Broncos.
Yeah, I would like him there. I'm excited for whoever goes there.
Put him with Sean Payton and let him be the primary for Sean Payton. And I'm like, there's certain coaches where I'm like, I don't mind if the running back is getting 70% of the work because that coach is so good that like 70% of the total running back work is still going to be fucking awesome. And Peyton's one of those handful. It's like Shanahanigans. It's like there's certain coaches. But yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., I think the hype was way too high and the results, I think, were what they were. But besides him on the list, I had Najee Harris, who is just perpetually a thorn in my side. I thought with Arthur Smith in town with the power offense, it would be a lot better this year. And we didn't even get like the good second half Najee. So this year just really sucked. And then the other one I had was any tight end.
No kidding. It was bad. It was bad right off the bat for all those tight ends. Mine would have to be Travis Etienne, just based on the draft capital that people spent on him. I think he was going like RB6, 7, somewhere in there. Absolutely crushed you for what he returned. Horrible year for Travis Etienne. Jackson Smith-Njigba would also be he'd be my runner-up there. He was a son of a bitch this year. Okay, I'm gonna say it. He may not like it to hear it, but he was a little son of a bitch this year. 8 weeks of hell, drug you through the mud with like you can't drop him, and then finally that first week, DK Metcalf's not there. We're like, this is it. Shits the bed. The next week, the week before the bye, comes out there. Puts on a freaking show. He puts on a show. So what do you have to do? You have to hold him through the bye week. You have to hold him through the bye week. Thank goodness you did because he blew up after the bye week. But like, I was tilting so hard going into that game before the bye week. So I'm like, clearly you can't do it without DK. I don't need him. I'm dropping him. And I couldn't. Thank God I didn't. But you know what? I'm not mad.
No, I like that because I think that's a good one because it's telling on the end results of JSN are extremely positive. I'm pretty sure he finished top 10.
Yeah.
It's like easy to forget, like, yeah, but he wasn't good for a half of a season and he tanked your team if you drafted him.
Absolute booty for quite some time.
All right. Well, now that we're talking about some surprising outcomes, let's get into our wild cards. This is the most surprising player of the year.
No, I'm saying, no, the brakes. Guys, why aren't the brakes working?
Because I cut the brakes. Wild card, bitches. Yeah!
What? Oh, my God.
So for the second year in a row, Baker motherfucking Mayfield, my man. 40 touchdowns? 40 without Dave Canales? Are you fucking kidding me? There's no way. There's no way it could be anyone else. The only one I even had close was, and this is more of like a joke on myself, was Zach Ertz finished as a top 10 tight end this year. But Baker motherfucking Mayfield, my man.
Hey, I may or may not have talked about Zach Ertz at the expo there in one of the panels, saying how he's going to finish in the top 12. But yeah, we're neither here nor there. Who knows? Who knows who said that? But yeah, I've got to go. Look, I'm going to dig a little deeper. Like I said, I'm going to try and go no repeats here. Darnell Mooney. where did this dude come from? Granted, on the year he finished, he was a wide receiver 3, finished right around wide receiver 30, 31, depending on what format you had. But this was a top 10 wide receiver, especially through the first 9 weeks, gave you multiple top 10 finishes. 3, in fact. If Kirk's noodle arm wouldn't have like popped in there, if he could have finished out the season, Mooney probably would have been the wide receiver 2, flirting with that wide receiver 1 finish. Absolutely crushing out there, despite Drake London. I mean, when Kyle Pitts is out there competing for targets, it's not too hard to be the number 2. But yeah, let me give some Darnell Mooney action.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. we already talked about kind of in the rookies. Even I didn't expect him to finish top 5. And same with Ladd McConkey. Like, again, both of those guys were my guys. I definitely didn't think of them as, top 10 wide receivers. Albert makes a great point. What about Sam Darnold? I mean, if not for the revisionist history of the last 2 weeks of watching this man turn right back into a pumpkin.
I almost had him in comeback, but like he's not coming back from anything. But like, yes,
Mayfield lost a playoff game and still somehow, in my mind, didn't look nearly as bad as Sam. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Sam Darnold shit the bed. Sam Darnold cost himself millions of dollars by he would have been better off. I can't remember where I heard it. Someone said if he had torn his ACL like the week before playing those last 2, he would have made more money probably next year than having played those 2 games now.
Yeah, at this point, he's looking like maybe a franchise tag's coming his way, or like, some sort of like 1-2 year contract. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this develops, but great freaking year.
If the Vikings are crazy if they don't re-sign him.
I could see a tag and trade going on with them. You could see it on the sideline on KOC's face. I don't think he wants him back.
I would give him 2 for $20 in a heartbeat. Not even like if
I don't know if he'd take that.
I mean, whatever the going rate is for a backup, like 2 for 30, even like I don't give a shit. Like knowing that the McCarthy kid is coming off his own devastating injury, and I'm tied to him, and I'm not going to be drafting a quarterback obviously this year. Like, there's no way I'm going into next year with McCarthy on a hope and a prayer and whoever the fuck else. Like, I'll take my chances with Darnold, and I'm going to need him as a bridge quarterback for probably 2. Like, I look at it as like, if I can get him on a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal, I'll just trade him in the 2nd or 3rd year. It doesn't matter.
See, I feel like he's going to pull in like $30 million a year though.
I think before 2 weeks ago, you would have been right. And now I think if I said, yo, I'm giving you 2 years, $30 million, take it or fucking walk. Like,
there's so many quarterback needy teams. I think somebody'd give him $30 million.
I let them. Fine.
I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm not saying it's a good idea.
That's where I'm like, if I'm having that conversation from the Vikings perspective, I'm like, look, we have a team where you can succeed. We're willing to offer you this to essentially be our bridge. We're going to be honest with you about what you are. But, beyond that, like, if you think you're getting more than that, go shop around and see what you can get from another dumbass team, because it ain't going to be us. I would move on if that was the case.
I mean, the Browns are going to be looking for somebody,
Browns. Oh my God. Yeah. That's the Voldemort thing. I don't know if that was surprising. I think it was a little surprising that he was as objectionably and unquestionably bad before getting injured. Like, that has been an unmitigated disaster.
How did he have 3 top 5 finishes? And
this year, fuck off.
No. Like, overall finishes. What was it? His year 2, 3, and 4 with Houston.
It was with the different.
And then just nothing even close to that. Like, karma's a real thing. Karma's a real freaking thing. I hope for the franchise and the fans that they can get out of that contract because of some shenanigans that he did. Like, he's been paid plenty of money. He's fine. He'll be good to go.
I just saw a thing that like they're trying to get out of it on the basis of like that Instagram post of like
for him fucking about.
They're like on vacation and he's supposed to be in a walking boot or something. The implosion of the Jets, I think, was another surprising outcome. So maybe just it's like maybe to some, but not to all. You know what I mean? This is one of my things of like just one of my ongoing things of like sometimes personalities are just like too much to overcome in sports where it's like that. I think a lot of times fans kind of get into almost this like Madden-like thought of or perspective of like just going by kind of numbers and kind of forgetting like the human aspect of just like that guy's a fucking pain in the ass to work with and for and around. And Aaron Rodgers did a number on this organization this year, and I thought it was delightful.
What do they do going forward? You know, like him and Devontae Adams, like do they move on from both one player?
I think
do they
run it back. I think
God, don't do that to me though.
I think that if I was in the position of the Jets owner and GM, I'd be like, I'd run it back. I don't see anything they can do next year to change the outcome of like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think it's more so just changing the culture. Hey, let's strip it down to the bare bones. Let's trade Garrett Wilson. Let's ride out Breece Hall. You know, like let's get rid of everything. Bring in Pete Carroll. Talk about a guy that can change the culture and overall. Is he going to bring a whole lot of winning? Maybe, hopefully, but I don't think that matters. I think at this point, like, yeah, hey, I bet they're Patriots fans. Ugh, can't believe you allow them here, Jack. What is that?
Oh, my guy Disco, he's a good friend of the show. But hey, let's get into the semi-main event. If this was WrestleMania, this would be night one because this is the worst fantasy show. We're going to start with the fantasy MVP.
And the award goes to
John Cena!
And his name is Saquon Barkley.
Going Saquon. Nice.
Saquon was easily my MVP. I mean, it was Saquon and Derrick Henry. That was my 1A and my 1B. In many drafts, I took both of them. If I was at 112, 201, I double tapped Saquon, Derrick Henry. So to me, that was the core of so many of my winning teams this year was one of those guys, or even better, both of them. But Saquon was just that little bit better. Not even like, I mean, stats wise, yes, he was a little bit better, but like it was also just like the juice, like he had the game where he did the crazy
the backwards hurdle.
Yeah, exactly, the reverse hurdle. And then he had like the game where he could have broke the record and he was like, nah, I'm good. Like just it was such a rich season. And he really carried the Eagles even more so than like, because Lamar was still so good that like, you felt like they didn't always need Derrick Henry, but it felt like the Eagles almost always needed Saquon or else they would not have even made the playoffs, arguably.
I wanted so bad to give it to Saquon. I wanted it to, and I just feel like it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible for us to take it away from probably the only safe pick in the first round of drafts this year. The Triple Crown winner, the guy who scored more points than anybody else. It's Ja'Marr Chase. I have to give it to the guy. If this was real MVP voting, yeah, I'd give it to Saquon. Lamar would be right there at second for me, but I think let's give it to the running back. Screw the quarterback. They get plenty. Let's give the MVP to a damn running back, folks. But, yeah, my fantasy MVP, I have to give it to Ja'Marr Chase. Absolutely crushed this year. With so many wide receivers, so many top wide receivers, like, just let us down this year in some way or another.
Shout out to my guy, Big Draft Energy, who was just in the comments earlier. He was a huge Jamar Chase proponent. He was very much like Jamar Chase 101 over everybody. He was absolutely right. I had Chase as very much even above Derrick Henry, honestly. I had Chase as my true runner-up to Saquon. I'm very much, and I am the author of disparity theory. So I staked my claim to how much more important running backs are to fantasy than wide receivers. Chase, he did the thing. He did the CeeDee Lamb thing where he actually was so far ahead of the next guy that he broke even the disparity theory model as a wide receiver, which is that means you had an extremely rare wide receiver season, though. That literally means like you had to have the bar to do that is 1,510. You have to have surpassed both, and he did. And shout out to him. He was definitely worth, even if you took him out as the 101, he was 100% worth it. So I totally agree. Yeah, Jamar Chase, no matter what. That's what he said all off season, and I got to give him his props. Jamar Chase was an absolute monster. But again, this is the worst fantasy show. We like to be negative here. So the actual main event of the year is the guy that fucked you over, the bust of the year.
Go fuck yourself.
So you already talked about him earlier, actually, when we were talking about frustrating starts, and he was a frustrating start for sure, but he was also just a bad fucking pick. He went 205 in my redraft league. That means he went, and I got to pull the board again, but I think I was looking at it earlier, and he went ahead of like Jahmyr Gibbs and like just a bunch of fucking like, Kyron. He went ahead of Kyron Williams and just a bunch of great picks. Travis Etienne was an absolute fucking scud missile to your lineups and to your fantasy team. He was absolutely the bust of the year, in my opinion.
Look, I'm going to pivot a little bit. I'm going to go with the guy. Well, he actually made it pretty easy for you because you knew when to start him and when not to. And, well, it's because the first dozen weeks you didn't start him because you couldn't. The guy was on IR. Christian freaking McCaffrey. I mean, I hope those people were able to pivot in those first few picks. And, you watch them tumble down your draft board. When do you grab them? When do you pull the trigger? Zamir White. I'm not a white guy. Not a white guy, just...
Well, Disco, because Zamir White was one of his really big calls of like Zamir White was going to finish as a top 10 running back, and obviously it was a huge dud. So that's one that I love to tease him a little bit about. But I mean, we've all got bad calls every year. That's the name of the game in fantasy. But yeah, Travis Etienne, I'm looking at the running backs that went after him. Kyron Williams, Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane. Ouch, ouch, ouch.
100%. Bad one. And you know what's crazy? That's really it. From the running backs, it was hard to screw up the running back pick besides, ETN and CMC. So you stay away from, the abbreviations and you're good to go.
Yeah, Isaiah Pacheco actually was another one.
That injury was a bitch.
Got injured and obviously really, didn't perform. And then Deebo Samuel fell off a fucking cliff, disappeared basically for the majority of the season.
Until championship week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you didn't make it to championship week if you had Deebo on your roster.
What you needed was Cooper Kupp until the playoffs, and then you trade Cooper Kupp for Deebo Samuel. That was the play to make, everybody.
The other one I had, and it was only because he was being argued, a lot of people were either on the Bijan side or the Breece Hall side. And I was very much a Bijan Robinson guy. And so if you were on the Breece Hall side, that sucked because, again, we talked about how bad the Jets were, and that drastically affected Breece Hall's season. He still had some good weeks, but they were fewer and further between. I actually probably could have had him as my most frustrating start because you just never knew when to start him. And there was this like weird middle part of the season where it felt like Braylon Allen was kind of starting to emerge and, you know, take more reps. And then they just were like, no, let's just go back to Breece. So that was, I don't know, Breece Lightning was more like Breece Mild Thundercloud. Yeah.
Right.
But that is it for the Fantasy Awards for 2024. And that's it for this show. We're done forever. No, for reals. I'm turning into a best ball bro. I was going to do it on a separate channel. I decided, fuck all that. We're going to just relaunch this channel for the third time in 3 years. Why not? But next year, we're going to come back strong. I keep saying next year because I'm moving this summer and I'm going to have like a whole like new setup and everything. So I'm going to be doing a lot less in the interim for the next couple of months and do a lot of back end stuff and kind of do a relaunch, soft relaunch over the summer. But that means until then, I appreciate all of you guys who have joined me on this ride for this couple of years while we've figured out what we want to do in this space. Brian, I appreciate you coming on the show all the times that you have. You've been a good friend to the show and to me and to us. So one more time for the people out there, tell us where we find you.
Yeah, man. Hey, thanks for having me. Always a blast when I'm hanging out here on the Worst Fantasy Show. But if you're looking for more of me, it's at @too_much_Brian on Twitter, at @too_much_Brian everywhere else. It's Fantasy Football Advice Networks where you're going to find me. Too Much Fantasy Football over there, Too Much Best Ball. Hey, if you're looking for something non-football, you need to take a little break. Too Much Movie Night, where we're going to be hanging out. We've got movie drafts, and of course, we break into all the fun. What do we got? 60-some, 70-some episodes out there. There's a movie you've seen. We've probably done it. Hopefully, maybe.
You know what? I'm going to self-invite myself to one of those at some point. That's what I'm going to do.
Absolutely, man.
We'll talk about that later.
100%.
Brian, thank you so much once again for being on the show. Thank you guys in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. Until that next time, I'll catch all of you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes